Yep, we are live. Hey guys, welcome to the second episode of The Code Rush, a dedicated show for developers with live demos and practical examples on DevOps and cloud native concepts. I'm your host, Pawan, and I have with me OP as another host to manage the show. Hey OP, how are you doing today?
Hey Pawan, thanks. I'm doing great and excited for this show as we are going to discuss a hot topic in the industry.
Yeah, really, we are going to talk something about AI and DevOps, which is really hot nowadays. So, who is our guest today, and what exactly are we going to talk about today?
So, yeah, our guest for today's show is Amit, who is the CEO of Kubiya.ai, who has led the AWS Global DevOps and DevSecOps partnerships, and is also a former VP at Cloudin and a second-time founder in the DevOps domain. He is familiar with DevOps challenges from a practitioner, vendor, and AWS perspective, offered him a window into the unique challenges between developers and DevOps exchange that led him to co-found Kubiya. As the industry's first DevOps virtual assistant, Kubiya was early to involve LLMs, large language models, and conversational AI into the DevOps toolchain as a Slack native chatbot that helps developers self-serve DevOps functions with minimal human intervention. So think ChatGPT for DevOps. That's Kubiya.ai. And in today's show, we are going to look at the roles of AI in DevOps.
Amazing. Amit has a very cool intro, I guess. So, hey Amit, welcome to the show. We are very excited to have you today.
Hey, that was a great intro. I couldn't have said it better. You're hired.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, well, with the introduction of ChatGPT, which is the hottest topic today, the world of AI has become very interesting. Looks like developers are already using this technology to streamline their day-to-day activities and tasks, right? So we have an expert here who is building something really cool in the field of AI to help DevOps professionals. So without any further ado, let's ask our guest Amit the first question that I have in my mind.
Sure.
So Amit, what is the role of generative AI and LLMs in DevOps, and how is that different from the previous generation of AI technologies?
Sure. Let me give you the short answer, and then
Yeah,
we can kind of double click a little bit more. But
sure, sure.
think about large language models and how
Hmm.
they change the dynamic of human to machine interaction. That's really bottom line. What made such a huge leap in these previous from the previous couple iterations. So if you think about it, for the first time, humans no longer needed to be fluent in code or even low code applications in order to interact with machines or systems. Okay? Instead of users can now simply prompt in natural language, English. Obviously, there's models that support other languages, and essentially convey any intent they want, and the machine is now intelligent enough to convert those prompts into code and essentially
Hmm.
interact. So while we're all familiar with ChatGPT, and you rightly mentioned it because it really made all the headlines, um, there's really origins to large language models that go back even to the 90s. Deep learning models, neural networks, machine learning models that essentially came about. They had a very practical view, very good at statistical analysis, predictive analytics, these type of things, but did require quite a lot of heavy lift. Um,
Hmm.
and that's really because they were rule based models and were trained by experts in the domain specific fields in order for the decision making of these engines to be good. So they really were based on patterns and anti patterns and were largely used for data analytics, process controls, resource optimization, and you name it. So they were largely limited to the amount of data that they were trained on in order to be effective. Now, what did large language models do? For the first time, there was a model that was able to kind of overcome the cold start problem by virtue of transfer learning. We'll get into some of these concepts if you
Okay.
want in a little bit, but to be able to enable knowledge and fine tuning of the models with the human feedback. That's been a very in almost very little time to get up and running and be effective. So that's been really kind of that shift from previous generations of AI to what you see today.
Okay.
Got it.
Yeah.
So to simply put it, current gen AIs are more smart. And do you also think AI can help with predicting and preventing production issues in DevOps?
Sure. Again, we can go down use case by use case. Some of these have been not fully fleshed out because it's only really the beginning of this experience. But I'll give you examples even from our own world. So most systems, and I think you guys know this because you're very well entrenched in this industry, are usually systems will show early indicators of distress before they fail, and they require someone of a certain level of operational knowledge and skill to read what's happening into it, where it's happening, how to triage it, and then obviously how to respond. So one way large language models, kind of along the lines of what I discussed a second ago, can assist operators to interrogate, say, the logs for the instance where the failure happened, and then find the exact area, and really in a kind of a conversation. So interrogate your logs in order to find those. Okay, that's one practical view. Again, you're going to see more and more of this to come as more companies start adopting these models. But here's, by the way, I mentioned this because we had a very similar situation in our own environment, even as early as this week, where actually yesterday, if we're all being honest with ourselves, right, we had a cluster. We use Kubiya to monitor our own temporal deployment. And we saw that temporal was starting to spit out more and more errors. And then we use a workflow to take corrective action, restart that unhealthy cluster, and then report back to the team that this happened. So that's very easy. Essentially interrogate within Slack what was going on and have a very easy remediation is kind of what took place.
Yeah. So, Amit, we saw like how AI is helping in predicting and preventing production issues, but
Sure.
how AI can be used in log analytics and monitoring in DevOps.
Sure. So I kind of covered part of this example in the previous question, but about interrogating logs. But the real pain we hear in finding the exact logs that correlate to specific instances, right? And then depending on the level of experience of the operator, also interpreting those logs and knowing that corrective action to take. So that's really kind of the bridge between the machine and the humans that I was kind of alluding to. Because here, it's kind of incumbent on the operator to take all of the corrective action based on their experience, based on what they're seeing in Stack Overflow, based on what they're seeing in kind of their own production environment, whereas a large language model makes it a lot more accessible. So for the first pain point that I just mentioned, it's pretty straightforward. Use a webhook that pulls the logs, and the instant something fails, make it easily accessible in a just-in-time manner. So it's a reduced amount of data to go over. And funny enough, if the sample size is brought to you in just-in-time manner, you can also take a look, from your actual phone and take corrective action directly from Slack, directly from the phone. So that's one example, right? For the second problem, fine-tuned domain-specific models can take corrective actionable insights effectively, since the system practices reinforcement learning with human feedback. It's constantly fine-tuning itself and getting more accurate as it's learning from the users and the input that they're providing. So even if today it requires a little bit more input, over time it actually becomes more and more usable. So
Got it.
So again, this one is specific to DevOps. What do you think the relationship between AI and infrastructure as code in DevOps?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question. We're in the age of infrastructure as code, so we might as well attack kind of the more the bigger topics here as well. So let's take infrastructure as code being kind of the barrier of entry. Oftentimes, it's a more technical audience, highly skilled, highly trained DevOps engineers, right? For many, it's a real badge of honor to be able to operate in these environments, and that kind of separates them from their peers oftentimes. It's no wonder HashiCorp has such a big following. There's a real kind of strong indicator that people are banding behind it because of kind of how they separate their skills. So we believe that conversational AI can really assist in templatizing configuration files, making it accessible to less experienced users, for example, who are less familiar, say, with the various parameters and inputs and inner operations, and effectively allowing less skilled workers to leverage IC templates without the DevOps dependency or maybe minimal intervention of DevOps. Okay, so we actually did a somewhat similar exercise with one of our customers, where creating Terraform modules within Slack, which auto completes the parameters based on end user prompts. This really helps democratize the use of these Terraform templates within a very easy interface that they're familiar with. So almost like no operational knowledge is needed in this case.
Yeah, I mean, amazing to see what like the role of AI in DevOps, not just in DevOps, like other topics like infrastructure as code and all. So, yeah, this is my favorite question. To next one is like, can AI be used to optimize the resource utilization in DevOps?
Absolutely, but I'm actually gonna take. I'm gonna throw a curveball at you. um, to be completely fair, traditional AI, because of the strong predictive analytics that it had, was very strong in resource utilization from a compute and infrastructure resource standpoint. So I wouldn't say the main disruption is necessarily in that range. It's more about what are the net new use cases for generative AI in this space. And in this case, in my opinion, it's a human resource capital utilization. Okay, human capital resource utilization. The biggest winner are the humans who can now interact with machines in a natural way and really streamline a lot of their processes without being right. And firsthand conversational, we've seen firsthand how conversational AI interfaces can increase the velocity, productivity of developer teams, release operations to work at their core business faster. So I think that's a resource I'm going to be focused on, because that's really the machine to human that conversational AI has done.
Got it. So here comes a dangerous question, as it's on about security,
Sure.
and also protecting data. So what are the security and compliance implications of using AI in DevOps?
Ooh, okay. Well, it's a very timely question based on a few things that happened recently. I'll try to actually focus on the non-obvious one, but the obvious one, there's bad actors using generative AI, obviously, to streamline their own hacking plans, plant malicious code and open source components, foundation models, such as what just happened with Redis and OpenAI. So I think that's a very timely question, because that's all over the news. But that's an obvious one for threat hunters, for red teams, and so forth. That's a whole different topic, of a whole different branch we can kind of open up and kind of have a separate webinar if you want. This is kind of more around the hallucination factor, the risk of taking action on a large language model that, without any controls, checks, and balances, will take actions that could be completely wrong, to be completely fair, right? Because that's the concept of large language models. They're statistical based. Oftentimes they make up the ending, right? And I've heard statistics as high as 20-25%. They're hallucinating. I've heard fine-tuned models are doing less than 10%. Let's be honest, it's still not perfect. And now put yourself in the role of a CIO or a CISO, or you name it. What are the mitigating factors that you can take if you want to go and leverage the awesome power of large language models and be productive in your own environment, and yet not put yourself at risk where a regulator comes knocking at your door and says, this entire region fell down because of an action that one of your infrastructure folks took. Why did he take that action? It was hallucinating. So this is actually a lot of where Kubiya comes into play. I mean, again, the approach is not exclusive to us, but I'll kind of give you how we've solved for this. So we've trained our models and domain-specific knowledge of the customer and continually fine-tuning it based on reinforcement learning and human feedback. So think about, it's not just getting the models to spit out a result, but also being able to control and to give input so that they learn from that input. And that's actually the biggest reason why an enterprise-grade solution requires those type of fine-tuning that they have control over. They need to have some semblance of control over what goes into that model, the outputs, the inputs, right?
Yeah.
Trust me, a CIO would feel a lot better answering a regulatory question if they could demonstrate that they had influence over the model and the decision making of it.
So uh, like I think the viewers and most of us are more interested, since you are working in the space of AI and DevOps combined. We would like to know some of the future trends and advancements in AI and DevOps, because now ChatGPT 4, there are a lot of things happening. So what's your view and what do you think are the future trends?
Yeah, look, there's so much excitement and so many novelty acts happening around these type of machines. There's people much smarter than me in the room who can think of very practical use cases that I haven't even thought about. But the reality of the situation, and this is kind of what I was trying to reinforce over and over again, it's choosing things that are easy for us to. This is a pain point. It's not being solved efficiently today. How do we go and get the easy wins in order to get the CIO office and more involved in kind of future endeavors and get more comfortable with this, right? Nobody wants to jump first into a frozen lake. They want to at least see that you can dip your toe into it and at least get a little bit of a reinforcement that it's right for your strategy. You didn't just spend a big level of resources and budget on some that had no previous engagement, and proof, right? So knowledge transfer, in my opinion, is one of the biggest use cases that even today we can show very strong kind of viability. The ability to, say, onboard a machine into your organization and have it absorb not just operational workflows, but also knowledge that exists in silos and have been memorialized into the various teams and organizations, but not necessarily documented, or documented, but you don't know where to find it. Maybe later I'll show a quick little example of what that could look like as well, if you like. But the concept here is, how do you go and hedge against critical personnel leaving the organization, retiring after 20 years? Thank you, Chuck. You just did your job, and you just left with half of the infrastructure team's kind of deep crevices of knowledge, automations, where everything exists. And you have to start from scratch, essentially.
Exactly.
These people typically get rehired as consultants for a lot more money after they can kind of demonstrate that they're critical points of failure. So that's kind of what I've seen.
Nice.
Perfect. So how Kubiya can help developers to increase their efficiency? Maybe can you show us Kubiya in action for us?
Sure.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
So I'll split the discussion into, say, two separate use cases. One is the end user, the developer experience, kind of consuming it within a very easy Slack interface, ChatGPT like chat experience. Where do I do share screen?
You can just share screen. I can add that screen.
Okay.
There is, I think, present. So
I will do it. Yeah, let me see if I can share Slack. What are you seeing right now?
I see. We see your Slack. Yeah.
Slack, yeah.
So remember, there's two sides to the AI component. One is how to address pain points associated, say, with developers and end users. We call them end users. It could be developers, it could be business users, and so on. And the other side is operators who actually have to maintain the platforms, platform engineering, DevOps. and kind of address those pains and how to kind of codify a lot of those operations. So start here. It's very fun engagement. We purposely built in, baked in, embedded, if you may, a lot of humor into our virtual assistant, Kubi. You can ask him some pretty wild questions. You can even ask him, where should I take a date tonight? Things like that. And it's pretty here, the Kubernetes Club, great service to take a date. Actually, one of my colleagues had his 11-year-old daughter start chatting with it, and we saw that. It was funny. It was like, what is your facial routine? Which to me was hilarious. Like, I would never think about answering this question. Try to keep my facial routine as consistent as possible. Can identify Kubiya. Look, it's fun. It's easy. It's you can ask it to tell you a joke. Tell me a joke. Nothing much different than ChatGPT. Only here it's more kind of a DevOps operator focused.
Got it.
Here it refused to answer my question. I guess too many. We made too much fun of it. It kind of got offended. But that's kind of on the lighthearted piece of it. Now let's go and talk about knowledge management. I'll actually start there. I think, Pavam, when I first talked to you about this, I said, I never tried harness, but let's try it anyways. What should I ask it? What is a harness project? Okay, and here it goes. It goes into harness docs. Okay, and then essentially gets your the exact place where this is given in a very summarized form with links to your doc.
Amazing.
How do I create? How do I trigger a webhook? So you can think about all the various use cases. And now I want to go and trigger a harness pipeline job. Let's do that. You want to go into that?
Yes.
So done. Now it's going to go into kind of a more mechanical form, kind of a gated workflow that was predefined by my operators, right? And let's try it. CI Python quick start. We kind of hooked into that a few hours before this, and let's see, build pipeline. Okay. There you go.
So,
just running.
Just a question. Can you also show us how to configure Kubiya with harness, like the initial steps?
Yeah, that's actually in our docs. Maybe we'll do that offline. It's more kind of walking through docs.
Maybe we can write an article or tutorial on it so that our viewers can try it out too. So that.
You can go and get the logs into Slack. Do you want to go harness pipeline logs? Yes. So that's an example. So again, the idea behind this, really, for everyone kind of watching this, is you no longer need to interface with the various dev tools. It's very easy to do it from one location, abstracted into it's almost like an internal developer platform, abstracted into Slack. Okay, so the idea is we can wrap any API, any SDK. You can go and really have full usability with the ChatGPT-like experience. Here we go. Of all of your tools with Kubiya, so kind of in an orchestrated form. So I can show you how to kind of grant access, TTL, revoke access. I mean, that's just kind of the end user experience is limitless, really, to what you're trying to do and kind of what you're connecting the system into, running workflows. Let's say, for example, I want to go and create a new environment on demand. Okay. So here's an example. I'm going to go and give myself access to run this, maybe create a policy. Here I'm hooked into my Slack IDP, identity provider, but you can use Okta, you can use Google, Microsoft, and so forth. So I'm just going to go in this case and create a policy for demo. And, let's go and create a new EC2 instance. Okay. And then I'm going to give myself this use case and I'm going to apply. So very easy. It just created a policy for me. I could actually go ahead and revoke that. I can actually give, just so everybody kind of in the room, you can see break last user. I can go and give access, revoke it after their shift, remove permission. It's all very, for people who have the admin panel, very easy to do it without having to click around, go to Okta.
Correct. Very interactive.
Yeah. And then, let's go ahead and create, sorry, I should probably just exit the questions because he's actually in the middle of interrogating me on a question. So create a new environment on AWS. Okay. I didn't say create EC2. I may not know it's called EC2. I said a new environment. It's funny. I can, and here it suggested something that wasn't correct on purpose. I actually kind of seeded this because if I say no, that's a reinforcement learning aspect of it. It will say, okay, sorry about that. Did you mean create a new instance? So that's kind of how you start ranking higher when you give it feedback. And that's how you start training, doing the reinforcement learning. And now it goes into a workflow. Okay, what would you like to do? What cost center are we associating this? A development instance, for example. Now we can go into the next gated question, which is, which EC2 instance do I want to use? Let's be very honest. Probably not all operators will give you unlimited options. This is directly from the AWS CLI. You may not want to run a microservice on a GPU intensive instance, but just for the sake of this demo, I'm just going to click one of these. And now it's going to say, well, with all respect, you're still missing parameters such as security groups. You should also have the security groups associated with this instance. And now the machine image AMI. And now once you do all that, it basically confirms that this was your selection. Do you want to go ahead with it? I don't want to run a higher bill for Kubiya, so I'm just going to say no at this point. But that's kind of an example of, if you know nothing, you just know how to prompt your intents. That's how you do it. Now you have the second aspect of what happens if you know what you want, and you don't want to have to go through 5, 6, 7 questions with a gated response. That kind of goes into that next level of, I think it's called multi-entity recognition. I want to go and restart Chagan service with Chagan cluster. Why did I select this? Because I know as a developer, I'm working in this service and the cluster. I have no idea where the DevOps stuck it, where it's being hosted, what cluster. I don't want to click around. So what it's actually doing, it's going to say, okay, I've identified a service in ECS. Is this what you meant? I'm going to go and say yes in this case. Now it's going to go and understand that I've actually given it some information like Chagan cluster and Chagan service. Now, if I'm wrong and I meant Chagan 2, that's fine too, because you can go and modify that selection. Okay. Same for here. So the idea behind this, really, I'm just going to go and trigger this restart. This is actually happening in our AWS environment. It's going and restarting, and you could actually go and view this on AWS. Okay. Redeploy, yes, and it's done. So imagine how simplified the experience for someone on call who no longer needs to do all of these himself.
Yeah.
Now we can go and essentially have the developers interact. And if needed, there's an approval flow needed, a budget that requires approval on a certain machine, about $50 per day, or you name it. That's kind of where they can go and get involved in the system, brings them back into the loop, creates that kind of full audit trail and logging. So that's one piece of it. Any questions there, or would you like to see kind of the operator side of the experience?
Yeah. So there are two questions. One is
You want
the
to take
language.
now the questions or the at the end?
I think there will be a continuation if we just go with it now. So the first question
We-
is the language models used by Kubiya or proprietary Kubiya models. Question mark. It's from
Well,
Venkat.
sure.
Mhm.
We've fine-tuned our own models and using several models. It's not just off the shelf. We're not even in open AI. Sorry, Chat GPT Turbo. We're not using those right now. It's fine-tuned model that we've kind of done. Yeah. So
And the
Uh,
second one we have, OP.
Yep. So, can Kubiya help developers with their coding activities like code reviews, test generation, optimization, etc.?
it's partially going to be actually um, answered in my next demo. So maybe you want to start there, and then and then we can go there. So let
Yeah.
me see. I'm just going to stop with this screen. The short answer is yes. It's really up to you how you want to use it. It's just like any platform that you can create your own workflows, knowledge, webhooks, cron jobs, and so forth. Right? It's really up to you as a operator how you would like to use it. But let me go and share this again. This time, let me see if it will actually go on. What are you seeing now? Okay,
Yeah, we
that's what.
see, we see. We, yeah.
That's our website. There you go. Okay, so um, here's kind of where we're going to take it back to the world of the operators, the low code interface. Everyone's familiar with low code interfaces. I really don't have to show you why mine is prettier or better. It's to each their own, right? Like that's not the main differentiation. It's kind of how we've interfaced our workflows is a human to machine conversation. It's a human in the loop. So it really, as you create workflows, you're creating conversational workflows. That's actually what makes this practically unique in this space. So I'm just going to go and show you what a pre-built template looks like. We got thousands of these. This is I think a service system service manager, AWS workflow. Um, you can see that it's essentially built, with the conditions true, false, as a conversation.
Amazing.
Okay, so if there you go. So I could actually go when I create a new workflow, modify one or so forth, and play it back and simulate this. So here's an example. I can go ahead and simulate this workflow. I'm just going to kind of click through this. You see, this is almost like that Slack experience here with string web.
Mm,
So it's showing you validating, testing, debugging before you have to go and commit this. So that's partially
correct.
one of the questions, conditions running through. So that's a very easy way to visualize and to test and to debug. And again, you can go on AWS. This is a very fun way for we've discovered for people to use this. You can go and modify. You can add steps. You can go and add buttons. At the end of the day, I don't want to start messing around with this because I know people are using this workflow. But that's an example of what you can do with the pre-built community. We have a community that helps us build these. Now we can go into that next level of how do you go and import workflows if it respects the Kubiya principle. So here's an example. I can go and import a workflow. I downloaded this right before this demo, and I'm going to show you a JSON file of a workflow from our Git. Okay. And this will be, I think, the same use case that I showed you with Create EC2. Sorry, let me just go ahead and drag it in. Now it's going to go and draw that workflow in front of us,
Okay.
using a JSON format. Here we go. There you go. So it
Yeah.
basically creates that. Now you can go and test it, debug it, run it, and so forth. So these are kind of the two fun ways. Now I'm going to go and take you kind of to a sneak peek to our announcements at KubeCon. So you might as well be the first to kind of see this live. How to prompt engineer a workflow, since you're using your own words. Let's do this together. Create an AWS workflow that, I don't know, creates a Lambda function and lists all regions. Good by you?
Okay.
Now the virtual assistant, starts oogling you and making sure that you're still engaged. Obviously, if you want to tell it, he can tell you a joke. And now it's actually going to go and create what I just prompt it,
Workflow. Okay.
hmm get,
Nice.
and so forth. So imagine no longer do you need to be an operational veteran who knows every inner working of your organization. All you have to do is prompt it and then interact with that workflow and prompt it again. So essentially kind of fine tune it for your own needs. So yeah,
Amazing.
thank you.
So, wow. During the intro, I said that it's like ChatGPT for DevOps, and I'm going to take back my words. It's so unique. You know, like you
Really.
said, almost like interacting with a support engineer on call. But
Yeah,
yeah, we can pass on the phones.
it gives a co-pilot type of experience. We haven't quite figured who connects to ChatGPT versus Copilot more, but at the end of the day, it's an AI assist tool in order to make you more productive. That's the bottom line. Like we don't have to dress it up in different buzzwords. It is what it is. I can say it's generative AI. I don't have to say you've seen it. So that's mhm.
I mean, it's an amazing
Seriously.
demo, and I hope our viewers also enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah. So it was really amazing. I mean, like
Thank
mind
you.
blown. Like what AI with combined with DevOps can, like how it can enrich developer experience and help developers, smoothen their workflows and also. Thanks for the demo and all the knowledge sharing with the community, Amit. And uh, we really enjoyed. I think even our viewers enjoyed a lot. So I think we don't have any much questions. So Amit, if people want to reach out to you, what is the where you are active on
Sure.
Twitter, LinkedIn? Where?
Kubiya, yes. So you can reach out to me, Amit Govrin, on LinkedIn, Twitter. Uh, Amit, AMIT, at Kubiya.ai is my personal email. I'm still
Got
giving
it.
it out, so you might as well write it down. And of course, you know, feel free to ping me on all these social media forums. Always happy to get feedback. Uh, let people into our early preview program to what I just shared here. We're still taking in a few other people right before we launch it in public availability in a month. So, yeah,
Cool. So we are really gonna go to Kubiya and sign up and
sure.
again with the harness, and we'll see how we can work with like both Kubiya and harness
Yeah, would love to.
combined, right? So there is one, I think again, one question at the end, again with Venkat.
Mm.
So
in the on-prem installation, what is the input and output to the model?
Right. So we use local runners, essentially, kind of remote runners are run in your own infrastructure and call our large language model API. So that's it's not an on-prem air-gapped environment. We're not offering that installment at this point, but it's a hybrid. It's very secure.
cool. So we are at the end of the show, I think. Thanks to all the participants and thanks, Amit.
Thank you.
I hope everybody enjoyed the demo and this episode, and we'll be coming up with more such demos and cool cloud native topics. And all. Yeah, Upi, you have want to say
Yeah,
something?
so I hope ChatGPT will lose some of its users, and Kubiya are going to gain more users.
Yeah,
Eh,
sure, guys. We'll talk to you say, soon. Take care. Bye bye.
Definitely.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Thanks.
guys.
Bye bye.
Appreciate
Bye
your
bye.
time. Mhm.
Bye.